welcome to Elderbrain's channel, where we have a mind blast. Here we discuss everything we like about our game from a creator's perspective and from a player's perspective as well. And we have today Trek with us, who will share his thoughts, and we will all project our mind waves into the multiverse. So I would like to ask Tommy to briefly introduce Elderbrain, and then I would like to ask Trek to do the same. And let's start. We have a few questions, a few topics, I would say, and then we will proceed along those. So there you go, Tommy.
So, hello, everybody. We are Elderbrain, Gabor and I, Tommy. We've been creating adventures, epic adventures. Crown of the Oathbreaker is our flagship product. It's a monstrous tome, 916 pages long, and followed up by Torrents of the Spell Hoarder, which is also a biggie, weighing in at about 500 pages. So we don't take any shortcuts with that. Elderbrain is our love project. We do Kickstarters based on surveys. So all the adventures are based on community feedback and input, from plot to NPCs, factions, everything in the story.
Tavern rumors.
Tavern rumors.
Random encounter.
Random encounter. So we involve the community as much as we can. We have a new book that we're working on, third in the series, in the same setting. Just a little teaser. It's Scepter of the Lightbringer, which is coming out probably next year. And we keep busy with, actually, we just launched an actual play of Torrents, so you can check that out as well and see us actually playing our game.
Thank
and bump it over to Trekiros.
Hello. So yeah, hi, I'm Trek. I'm a French YouTuber. I wear a lot of hats. So I do software engineering, I do game design. But on YouTube, at least, I make videos about basically how people who make games for a living make games, and how we can learn from that as game masters, steal a bunch of techniques, and maybe run smoother games. But they have so many resources online, and I'm a bit of a nerd, so I just watch them whenever I have a lunch or something. So yeah, I kind of just try not to reinvent the wheel and see how people have invented the wheel over the past 20, 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm. You're very focused on game design and techniques of in your videos I learned a lot about how to what the little niche techniques of creating dungeons and monsters, and how zombies are actually. You're very familiar with zombies, I learned.
I love zombies so much. I just finished running a zombie campaign about a couple months back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the thing about GMing, which personally I find very interesting, some people might find it a bit intimidating, is that you're kind of 14 different jobs, right? You're a level designer, you're a world builder, you're like a writer, referee, all of these things. So these are things that people dedicate their entire lives to. So you're never going to be the best at everything. Yeah. But that also means there's always going to be some new tricks to learn. And to me, I'm interested in those new tricks. I want to learn.
Yeah, as are we and as are our viewers. So
you're the perfect guest for Mind Blast.
Yeah. Do you have any ongoing projects or something fresh and funky you would like to present the world?
Yes, sure. So a couple months back, I revealed a project of a sci-fi post-apocalyptic tabletop RPG called Flarefall. The entire rule set right now is free, while it's in very, very early alpha. Mm-hmm. It's on my website. So if you want to go check it out, it's pretty interesting. It has some hot takes on things like how crafting should work, etc., that I haven't really made videos about yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very early project, and I'm hoping that the community will enjoy it and give me some good feedback so I can make it as good as possible.
I'm sure we will include
Link
the
will
link
be in the description.
in the description. Yeah. All right. So let's jump at our first topic for today, which is how to build great encounter or dungeon maps. And there are many aspects of this, probably. You have covered this to a certain extent. How do you build these dungeon maps? How do you build your dungeon maps? How do you make them unique? How do you make them enjoyable, different, useful, fun to interact with? And then we will tell you as well how we do it. And just give us examples. Do you have a dungeon in your zombie?
I had a few,
campaign?
yes. I actually shown one. Actually, I've shown two of them on my YouTube channel. There was one on my very, very first map, my very, very first video, sorry, which was about FPS games. And that video was basically looking at how FPS games build their maps to increase the choices in tactical combat. So that was a very combat-focused type of dungeon. Then there was another one which was more focused on exploration. So for that one, I took inspiration from Zelda as well as Disneyland, which, as it turns out, is a very smartly designed place. It's almost like they have millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to. At least I try to. My players will tell you if I'm not succeeding, but I try to basically give different experiences, right? Because the D&D or tabletop RPGs in general, they're very versatile games. You can do a lot of them with you could do heists with D&D. It's like there's definitely games that are better suited for it. But you could do it, and how does it work, right? Because it's an action game, not a stealth game. So there's definitely some things to learn here.
Yeah, so you mentioned two types. Let's say a very combat-oriented one. What's the FPS takeaway there, and how you build one up, and what's the more of an exploration type?
Yeah. So for the combat-focused dungeon, I took example from the FPS genre, and if you've played FPS, you will absolutely cringe at what I'm about to say, because this is the type of map layout that is absolutely overused in that genre.
The 3-lane.
Yeah. The 3-lane dungeon, basically, or the 3-lane map. The basic idea is just you kind of want to give players choices about how they approach the situation, and just by having 3 lanes which interconnect and maybe they're not completely symmetrical, you tend to create the kind of gameplay that lends itself well to that kind of tactical combat and a lot of tactical decisions.
Yeah, I think the main idea behind creating a game is always giving the option of having the right choices. So there, somebody said this before, and I mean Tommy knows. I'm repeating myself to him probably all the time. It is that it's a game should be a series of interesting choices. That's what a game is defined. That's what defines a game for me, at least. A series of meaningful choices, I would rather say. And yeah, the 3-lane setup definitely brings that up. But you can't always do that. So there is, how about the exploration part or the exploration type?
For that dungeon. If you look at my videos, you'll see it's the one with Ganondorf standing in front of Mickey's castle in Disneyland. Very iconic thumbnail. This one is basically, the idea is the hub and spoke layout. That's how they call it. And the idea is that you put the player in this central location, and then they get to choose where they explore next. But the fact that you have this central location that the players return to every now and then, like, it creates a very natural pacing. But you're probably familiar with the concept of the Fichtean curve, right? It's this thing in storytelling, which is, in order for a scene to really hit with the action, you need to have a downbeat before, right? To have a moment to rest before you have the action. And just returning to that hub constantly, it feels like backtracking if you look at it cynically, but in practice, it creates this calm moment that is really natural. Yeah. This safe place for the players.
Do you? I mean, you have to create different themes, for your dungeons. How do you pick those? Because I think a good dungeon is a combination of its usage and, I mean, the way it should be used, and also the theme that it covers, and the combination of the two. So how do you choose those? Well, there's probably more to it, but I just said these two in mind now. How do you choose your themes?
Is important for sure. So I'll give the example of those two. The first one was a spa resort in the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of like very rich people who were turned into zombies and were in their bathrobes.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So I like to start with this image in my mind of like a scene that I want to place in front of my players that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And to me, this scene of like a bunch of almost naked old people running at them and wanting to eat their brains. That was just funny.
In the steam room where you can't see anything.
Yes.
Yeah. You can probably see the light flashing in my face because I'm looking at my notes. I wanted to talk about the different types of uses of dungeons that we do, and how we try to theme them. And what we are doing is the same. I mean, that's why I just grabbed the mic and wanted to tell you that we do the same. We come up with a feeling first, and then add everything behind it, so that it all culminates in the desired scene and feeling, and maybe it can drive the story even. I mean, if you need robed zombies, then you need to come up with the background story and the dungeon for that. And obviously we have the steam room and the pool, and you can drown in the pool and you won't see stuff in the steam room, and the buffet and all these parts, and even the treasure is fitting for that, that you find the platinum credit card there and all that. Of course, we're talking fantasy here, so probably different stuff. But this all defines what I'm trying to say here in my not so polished English is that the first thought, which should be the final result, defines everything behind it. And we do this, and it seems you do the same. We build everything up so the vectors all collide and sum up into this final thing. Like we have a few types of dungeons. We do a lot of dungeons. I mean, in our books there are, like, I would say, dozens of dungeons, and we always try to keep them fresh, and we always have this feeling, okay, this is going to be a magic shop that you do a reverse haste. You need to bring something back. So the reverse haste is on one hand is a unique aspect. The magic shop immediately gives you a setting and a feeling to it, and then what we decided was that we give out some information about it. So somebody already tried this haste and failed, and he has a map of a few of the alarms and all that, because if we decided that if we thought and we think it works well, and as our feedback, the feedback we get, it just says it does, that if you bump into the problem on the spot, that's a different feeling than if you can prepare it. For a heist, you need to have something to grab onto. It's always an insider, it's always an informant, it's always the map. You have some information to hold on to, and this way we created a reverse haste where you can go in there, and obviously not everything is recorded, and not everything, you don't get all the information, like that the wizard is collecting body parts to create his love, recreate his love in a flesh golem form.
Major spoilers.
Oh, we have
Yeah.
major spoilers.
We should say.
By the way, everyone dies at the end.
Yeah, everyone dies in the end, and the world goes bad. So and again, from this main idea, we populate like reverse engineer basically the dungeon, and yeah, we try to come up with new ideas for each of them. Tommy, can you share your thoughts?
Sure. I just to add, one thought to what you said, that and Trek as well, that like a D&D can, I think, work as a stealth kind of game, or like a haste kind of situation, but I think definitely it works better if players have can make a plan, always have a plan,
Always have a plan.
which
Rule
is super
number one,
important.
Never split the party.
Never split up, never surrender. And it adds player agency as well. So of course, when players can figure out their plan, and when it actually works, that's I think the best feeling as a player. Of course, in D&D, usually, we spend hours making the plan, and then it's totally different once you get inside. So that always happens. But yeah, I also think, just to give a different kind of example, and I checked all our maps ahead of time, and we do have a kind of recurring theme that we like, is reusable maps. So I really enjoy, and Gabor as well, that when we have reusable in the sense that you're going through the same map but in different circumstances. So it's totally changed. The layout already, but it's populated by different monsters, or something happened in the dungeon, and you have to go through it again, or from a totally different kind of feeling or atmosphere which is inside. Perfect example would be there's a in Crown of the Oathbreaker, there's a humongous royal palace. So it's one of the biggest dungeons we've ever done.
Too big.
It's too big, way too big. Many pages, different levels and sub levels, and all that stuff. And what we decided to do is that the king has a like a loft tunnel, where he goes out into the city to have his liaisons with the ladies. And you start actually the dungeon in the heart of the dungeon. So you go directly to the royal quarters, and then you do, you have to get out through the entire palace. And the palace, of course, comes up in a normal setting, and then it totally changes when it gets, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but there's a curse and hags.
It changes. So the whole map, you reuse the map because it changes, and you need to re-enter, but it shows a different face, and we think that's entertaining.
Yeah,
that's really good, because the second time you go to that dungeon, you're not just like in a maze choosing between left and right with no information. Like, oh, okay, if I go right, it's the bathroom, or it's the servants' quarters. That helps the players come up with a plan, and hopefully this time the plan will actually work.
Yeah, yeah, and also you open the door and you know what to expect. Sort of. Of course, it's gonna be something different there, but then it's a swarm of ghoulish sprites, in the kitchen eating each other and you. So it's entertaining to have this. I almost know what's going on. There's another example. You mentioned, Tommy, earlier to me that you would like to come up with the Pleasure Palace. Which is again
Pleasure Palace of Bintil Vendrat.
Vendrat.
Oh god, fantasy names.
Yeah, well, our players are always like getting scared when we get to the dragon names, which we have these Forgotten Realms tick, that we do these unpronounceable names.
If it has less than 5 syllables, it's not a real name.
It's not a real dragon name, yeah. So yeah, go ahead, Toby.
Yeah, the pleasure palace. It's a good one. It's a drow pleasure palace of a kind of fallen civilization, so they're not there anymore. And you go through the palace from the top, or this tower, from the top. And when you come out the bottom, the entire palace
You
or
can shift to
tower
the ethereal plane and
shifts
go back.
to the ethereal plane, and you're in the ethereal plane coming out, and since it's a curse, kind of, they were cursed into the ethereal plane, ghosts and specters and all that stuff. But the dungeon itself just serves as a kind of setting for two totally different planes,
And it shows a different face as you ascend from the bottom to the top through the ethereal plane, which is obviously inhabited by the ghosts of the drow, who are being very, very hedonistic there. But first, it's just an empty place. Maybe there's a guy who also explored it, and the leftovers from ancient times, and then it gets populated as you come back through the ethereal plane and find out what needs to be found out. I was watching one of your videos, Trek, where you mentioned the kobolds who a very simple thing actually, but very entertaining, and it gives thought, and it starts a chain of thoughts. The kobolds who are at the gate with the alarm bell.
Oh, right, that was the stealth video, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, how do you choose these, and what are your favorites? I don't even know how to say this, like aspects of a dungeon or features of a dungeon like this, because it totally changes the scene. If the kobolds can ring the alarm, it's gonna be a totally different feel than if they can't.
Yeah. So for the context, I don't know if I have the map. Yeah, it's fine. I can send it to you after the podcast, and you can do some editing magic, I guess. But yeah, for context, basically you have this red dragon's lair, which is in a destroyed old dwarven settlement inside of a mountain. And at the entrance, you have just these two tiny kobolds and a big alarm bell. And right beside them, or like behind them, there's this room with a bridge overlooking the entire kobold encampment with like probably 24 kobolds in there. Ooh. So if you manage to if you manage to get rid of the two kobolds first, before they ring the bell, then you're going to have an easy time. You can just cross the bridge. Nobody will see you. It's fine. But if you don't, you're going to have some problems. But this particular dungeon, the way I came up with it is I looked at a pretty famous technique which came from it did not come from Mario, but the main level designer for Mario is known for using it in pretty much every single game he's worked on. Mm-hmm. I will absolutely butcher the pronunciation because it's Japanese. It's called Kisho Tenketsu. And it's basically an idea of pacing, where you start very, very small, very easy, and then you develop the idea. So the next room after this one is kind of a similar setup where you have to deal with just a few enemies before the alarm gets rung and chaos ensues. But now they have maybe a couple more enemies, or maybe more powerful enemies that you have to deal with. Then you have the third, which is the third step in this pacing story, which is the twist. So you take this idea that you've trained your players to be good at, and then you add a little something extra. So in my case, this was a red dragon's lair, so I added some smoke. So now you had to deal with the enemies without raising the alarm, except you couldn't see your teammates to coordinate simultaneous assault. And then once you have done all of this work, where you have prepared your players, trained them to come up with the plan, and then you've trained them on harder and harder situations, that's when you can reward them, basically. Just the last step is just, congratulations, you're good at this. You have mastered the art of coming up with a plan that actually works.
And then the red dragon comes.
And then the red dragon comes. Yeah. Or you just steal all of its treasure.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever we come to dungeons and monsters as well, I'm always feeling that the challenge, where you need to come up with something new, and obviously you want to entertain your players, and you don't want to pull the same strings, and and it's really hard, and I'm always trying to avoid. The monster, I mean, sometimes, well, of course, sometimes monsters are fun, but also, I'm always having this challenge for myself that, let's create a dungeon without monsters and do the same as you said to step up the game within the dungeon, or have a twist inside, but try to avoid always putting a room with the monster in it, and then the next room with the trap and the monster, and then the next room with the trap, and then the next room with the boss monster. And it's really hard. I hope that we could come up with good ones. We have a few where we just have, maybe magic effects that you need to come over, and we say, okay, this is actually in Torrents of the Spellhoarder, we have set this up for ourselves, that each 8 orbs that you need to find, super spoilers, each 8 orb that you need to find is located in a different dungeon, where the powers of the orb take over, and the 8 orbs are of the 8 schools of magic. So there's a necromancy dungeon, the pleasure palaces of Vendrad Bintel or whatever, and that's the ethereal and the ghost and all that. But then you have the abjuration one, where it's all abjuration powers, and then there's the divination one, where it's all divination powers, which hold you back. And there are some monsters in there, but the whole theme is centered around this idea that this orb emanates some sort of power, and you need to overcome these. And there are some guys who could not overcome, like the enchantment, for example. Obvious example is the enchantment orb, where you have a complete village of charmed and dominated individuals who have fallen in the traps of this orb's power. And those
and that's another way you can help to give yourself some ideas, is just start with a list. In this case, the list of the schools of magic, and then you come up with one concept for each.
Yeah.
You could do this with a lot of concepts. Like, I've had a dungeon that was based on the 4 seasons, right? It was based on the Eladrins. Mm-hmm. So you had one room for each season, and then one puzzle, one boss fight for each season, etc. Mm-hmm. You could do this for the clerical domains. You could do this, like, basically just pick a list and then try to make a dungeon based on it. Yeah. Maybe try to make 12 dungeons based on it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it helps, I think, if you what's the word, like themes or thematic approach. Yeah. It definitely makes it interesting, I think, because it adds a framework, like the 4 seasons. It's a cool, frame to build something on. So and I think it's easier to build a dungeon or a monster or a magic eye or anything.
I strongly advise to anyone watching this video to constrain your imagination to a certain box, and it will help you. So immediately the troll is not a troll, but a frost troll or an ice troll on the winter section of the dungeon. And this what Tommy says, it's really important. And I think we always speak about this constraining it. And actually, in the last video,
I have a video about that too as well.
Oh, you do? Okay.
There's a lot of research on that. Yeah, and basically, like, the idea of using a restriction is that by using a restriction, your starting point is already outside of your comfort zone, so you can't fall back into it.
Exactly. And it sometimes seems hopeless, and then it just starts. And when you find the function and find the idea, the string of ideas, and then it just, oh my God, it can get so beautiful. And I'm telling you, for us, and I'm telling all of you, for us, you, the viewers, and our surveys are much help in this, because they tell us, this is what we want. We want an artifact. We want a weather hazard to dominate the story. So in the next adventure, it's going to be a heat wave. No water. It just immediately gives us a setting for the place. And yeah, so this constraint of ideas, and this being in this box and moving yourself out of your comfort zone is very, very important, I think, to come up with fresh stuff.
Yep.
But otherwise, you would, you would always do the same stuff when you want to come up with something.
And it tailors your imagination, because we can, D&D being an infinite game, you could make an adventure about literally anything, so if you have a starting point and fix the kind of elements to work with, then it's a given, what you can build upon. So if it's kind of like Legos, I think, if you could build anything from Legos, but if you want to build a spaceship, then you have a framework to work with already.
Yeah. Let's go to monster design, because probably the same could be told regarding monster design as well. But and zombies are such a good example.
Oh yeah. Raise your hand if you've ever made a bunch of series of monsters who were based on the 7 deadly sins.
Oh yeah.
Or like any of these lists that we all have gone through as homebrewers and just D&D enjoyers in general.
Before I give you the mic on this, I just want to tell you that tell everyone that one of my favorite books is World War Z, and World War Z has such a great example on squeezing the last piece of imagination out of this very, very simple thing, zombies, and the guy doesn't even make it varied. It's the same type of zombies, it's just the situations that change, and it is a perfect example of how you can tell 1,000 tales about, I don't know, an egg. It's just amazing. So yeah, how do you work with monsters? How do you design your monsters? How do you make them?
I've gone through so many different ways. Like the very first monster I've designed was probably like a beholder dragon, giant angel devil, I think.
Leech, yeah.
But just take everything, blend it, and then boop, you've got your big bad evil guy.
Yeah.
And then you spend the next 2 years trying to come up with a backstory for this guy, so that which actually makes sense.
Which is hard, yeah.
Nowadays, I just try to basically. There's this concept which is going to sound extremely nerdy, and it is called orthogonal unit differentiation. If you've played 4th edition, it should be pretty familiar.
No.
The idea that some monsters are bruisers, and some monsters are artillery, and then some monsters are squishies, or whatever they call them. Like each monster has a different role. So when I look at the zombies, for example, I go, okay, we have one type of zombies. I also have a list of like 15 different roles that a monster can have. I'm just going to come up with one zombie for each of these roles. So, for example, you could have a zombie which is a peeler, right? So in Left 4 Dead, you've got this guy with the long tongue who can pull you out of position and get you in the middle of the zombie horde. So that's one type of zombie which didn't exist before, and now it exists, and that creates a bunch of new gameplay opportunities for the players, because now they're going to have to come up with a plan to deal with that specific zombie in a way that is different from the other zombies.
Yeah, well, zombies could go wild. Slow zombies, fast zombies.
If you look at Resident Evil, it's basically just, we looked at a thing and we turned it into a zombie. A leech zombie, a snake zombie, a bird zombie.
Yeah, but also just basic humanoid zombies. Actually, the guy who wrote World War Z also had this manual how to survive. This book, I'm not sure about how it's called. You guys can look it up. How to survive a zombie apocalypse, sort of thing. And then I think in there or somewhere else, I don't know, I read about all the variations of zombies, and it's just so many. And you can, of course, change them with a long tongue and grappling zombie and all of those. There was something in your monster videos where you mentioned the legendary resistances and why they suck. We have a few things that we. Oh, you went down the screen now. Come back.
I'm hiding.
Oh, you're hiding on purpose. Okay.
If I don't, I'm gonna go on a rant.
Okay, but please do, because we wanted to discuss so many things from your videos, like the legendary resistances, what you think about and how you design the mass combat things, and your battle sim, which is quite extraordinary, I think. And then we will tell you our stuff.
Yeah, so the legendary resistances are
Go
not
ahead, man. Feel
very
free.
fun.
Get it out.
You said it earlier, right? The idea of a game is that you present the players with a bunch of choices. Some of the choices are going to be about their character expression. Some of those choices are going to be about tactical decisions, etc. When it comes to legendary resistances, they kind of just exist out of necessity.
Yeah.
They don't really present the players with any choice. They're just taking away stuff, right? Because especially when you have monsters like what's it called? This big demon, challenge rating 21. It has like plus 15 to charisma saves. It has like magic resistance and then 3 legendary resistances. You're not gonna bane this guy.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna work, right? So if you have these spells in your spell list, you just have less choices now.
Yeah.
It's just never gonna work. So yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to come up with, I think it was 20 alternative mechanics for legendary resistances. So you have different categories. So you have one category which is legendary resistances, but with a cost. So maybe, for example, if you have like a Marilith who has 6 arms, maybe she can resist against a spell, but in doing so, she has to sacrifice one of her arms. So now she deals only 5 attacks per round.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's one cost, for example.
That's very clever.
And there's like 6 or 7 of these. Then there's also resistances which you can target, right? So the boss will always resist spells, but maybe if you can give yourself disadvantage so that you can target the little magical crystal on their forehead, and you destroy that crystal, that will actually destroy their resistance to spells. So like you can have marshals helping the casters deal with their spells. So that's another way you can approach it, is basically just make it possible for the players to actively try to destroy those resistances. And same thing, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I have a third category, which is multi-phase encounters, right? So if you have a spell like Banishment, for example, or Hold Person, Hold Monster, these are spells where the problem is for the GM, the reason we have to have legendary resistances is that these spells end an entire encounter. But if your encounter has more than one phase, it's just going to end one phase of the overall encounter. So it's not as much of a problem anymore. And we don't need the legendary resistances. We don't need to just be the fun police.
Yeah, I think they try to remove from 5e, they try to remove all of these one-shot spells, obviously, which I guess is obvious to everyone, these save or die sort of spells. And then, then they try to protect these big baddies with the legendary resistance, which again is really, really annoying sometimes and helpful for the DM, but in a very boring way. So
yeah, I feel like the game mostly inherited those from a time where maybe it was expected that every single boss has like 8 minions surrounding it.
Yeah.
But at least in my experience, there's a lot of GMs who are just kind of in love with the idea of a solo boss monster, right? Just the aesthetic of it is very appealing. So regardless of whether or not there is mechanical support, people are going to do it.
Yeah. This brings something a bit different to my mind, but still I think the same, that we have, for example, in our new book, super spoilers. now. But I'm not going to say it, but just trying to sum it up in a very obscure approach, that it's really powerful, but we created, and I love the idea, and Tommy, we both love the idea that you somehow degrade the boss monster, you know, like you have these options that you can find during the adventure that just kind of debilitate the boss monster,
or add a weakness.
We add a weakness to it, you know, but you need to find it in the adventure. So, like, for example, in this case, this is where the spoiler comes, but I don't tell you where it is. You can find information that if you tell the boss monster, it gets so angry that it just loses focus on stuff.
Oh,
you
that's
know?
really good.
And this adds. You know, first of all, this is not a spell. There is no saving throw. It's just an information you find in a book, you know. But gives you an extra edge and gives you this feeling that I could weaken the boss monster, and I could. It's probably the opposite of legendary resistance, you know. This weakens it. But maybe this is why it came to my mind. But this is I think this is, and also because of the solo monster you mentioned. But this is, I think, it just makes a colorful tool. It gives you a colorful tool to.
Yeah, it brings all of the pillars of the game together in a way where the players feel like their decisions outside of combat also matters.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I have a fun story, and I think, Trek, you might have been there to witness this.
I know what you want to say.
When we were playtesting Torrents, one of Morgar is the arch necromancer Kraken is one of the BBGs.
I hate this guy.
You were there. You were there when this happened. What Tommy's about to say.
I think I fought him. I was pretty sick at the time, so I missed a couple sessions.
Yeah,
it was in the beginning because it comes in the beginning, and one of the wizards cast a dominate
monster,
dominate monster at 9th level, and Gabber was playing DMing, rolled a 1 or 2, so it failed the save.
And it didn't. Tommy, you forget the main part. It didn't have, because the Kraken doesn't have legendary resistance, and the Leech doesn't have it either. So we decided not to give it one. You know, and the boss, one of the boss monsters, comes to show his powers. Around and flex a few muscles and get everybody get a name for himself. And then one of the guys just dominates it. Like boom. You're like, oh shit!
First round,
immediate decision. Give it legendary resistance. So we did to avoid such situation, but also it ruins the game to a certain extent. So yeah.
This game, like D&D, is very much designed so a good combat encounter. You have this metric in your mind where if you're less than 3 rounds of combat, it's probably a bit anticlimactic. If it's more than like 8 rounds of combat, it's probably a chore. You have this very easy number to remember, and you can very easily see when something is going wrong like this.
Yeah, let's talk about mass combat, because we love mass combat. Many people don't, but for some reason we love it, and we have made our decision on how to simulate basically mass combat before your video came out, and we were surprised to see that you're on the same page. How do you think about this, and what are your thoughts? Because you made a video on it. What were your thoughts?
So when it comes to mini games, like whether it's mass combat or maybe vehicle combat as well, I've experimented with a bunch of different ways to do it. Most of them went horribly wrong.
Same with us.
But basically, the main takeaway I basically just scrapped off of my many failed attempts is that when people sign up to play D&D, they kind of want to play D&D. They want to play their character, not really play an army, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like if you tell them, okay, next session we're going to play Warhammer suddenly, like that's a completely new game they have to learn. They're not going to get that fix of, I get to make silly goblin voices next week, which is important, right? That's one of the reasons we play this game, even if it's kind of silly. So yeah, this realization, it kind of led me to mini gamify all of these mini games. So for mass combat, for example, I made it so you play as a commander and then you give orders around, but then we kind of don't focus too much on the armies. We focus on you as the hero of this battle.
Yeah.
And you're still making a bunch of tactical decisions. You're still moving troops around, trying to block paths, trying to win the rock, paper, scissors dynamic, where you have like archers and cavalry and infantry, and each has their weaknesses, their strengths, etc. But we're still focusing on you and your character, because that's what you signed up to do.
Yeah.
And do you go into mechanics like rolling for the armies and?
I try to simplify it as much as possible. So when two armies clash, they just deal like 25 damage. We don't roll for it. We just go, yep, super quick. Let's move on to the next commander, because those are who matter. But when a commander fights another commander, or when a commander fights an army, then yeah, we do roll, because that is who we are focusing on.
For sure.
We kind of go into more detail for that case.
Yeah.
Well, you want to talk about it, Tommy, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's basically our kind of mass combat rules, which we presented in Crown of the Oathbreaker, because it does have a mass combat element to it. We created unit monster type, so it's it almost works like a swarm in a sense, that it has a huge space. It can occupy, other creatures' spaces as well. And in terms of damage, it's pretty much the same. It's, armies deal automatic damage, so there's no attack. There is an attack because they can deal double damage or triple damage even on a critical, but it's an automatic hit. And individuals, so characters, can interact with units using spells, area spells, obviously.
Which is the same thought, because we I'm sorry to interrupt now. I just wanted to tell here that we also felt like the characters need to be significant players in a mass combat, and if you can cast Firestorm, then you definitely should.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then we are probably more number crunchers than we should be, and because the game itself is based on stat blocks, we just try to incorporate the two, to have a stat block for the army itself and to make that relevant or realistically balanced compared to a single, even 20th level wizard, to a certain extent. So yeah, I'm sorry, just wanted to add this.
Yeah, that's about it. So it's kind of fusing the individual character, who can of course go and deal damage to an army, but when you have 50 archers shooting arrows at you, you're gonna get hit.
It's gonna hurt, yeah.
It's gonna hurt. That's the realistic part. So when we ever play tested this, they were like, "Oof, this is hardcore," and we were like, "Yeah, imagine, zombies everywhere around you. It's not just like a few zombies. It's a zombie army.
It's a horde, yeah.
It's a horde, and they are tearing you apart." But still, you're probably your high level. So I mean, we try to. It's very hard with D&D, the AC and no damage reduction, but more of a damage resistance, which is again
damage threshold. It's called.
Yeah.
It's our 3.5 pass sometimes creeps back on us.
Yeah. Did you like 3? Did you like 3.5?
I'm a baby GM. I've only started with 5th edition. I'm part of the Critical Role generation.
You are. Because in 3.5 you had more broken down characters. I mean, more detailed character options, and more crazy number crunching. So, I mean, we had these sessions where we had these Excel sheets, automated Excel sheets, tracking spells, durations, bonuses, stacking, non-stacking, all of this stuff, and it's quite exaggerating. But you can make more colorful characters, so that's actually why we have in our books we have mm, detailed characters, where you have, if it's a halfling pirate, then it has the luck of the halflings, listed, because it's a halfling. It gives it a flavor, an extra something to use and to represent its background and nature.
We do monsters with classes is basically what it comes down to, and it's an approach that some people might not enjoy so much, because it, as a GM, it's obviously you have
a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in.
But when you can pull the card, and if it rolls a 1 and it's a halfling's luck, then it definitely comes handy that this is a halfling. This is not a dwarf or an elf. Yeah. How about vehicle combat? Because we were thinking a lot. I don't know. Do we have anything else to add to mass combat, or Trek? You have something to add, Tommy? It was really hard for us actually to come up with the final, because one thing I wanted to say. First, when we played previous years, during our whatever 30 years of gaming, we tried to super simplify it. But then, if it has very simple rules, basically out of the rule set of the game, then comes two things out of this, or maybe more. But what's significant is one that you mentioned, Trek, that it's a new game. So let's learn a new game. Even if it's simple, it's a new game. And the other thing is that it can't relate. My con of cold against the zombies can't relate. Maybe in Kingmaker, or I don't know where we had these.
Kingmaker was the big one.
Pathfinder came up with ideas, or it was us. I don't remember.
No, it was Kingmaker had a mass combat rule, and we changed it, obviously.
Yeah, because if you have like a spell that deals damage, then it deals its level, Like you cast a Con of Cold, it's 4th level, it's 4 points of damage.
Right, because a lot of these mass combat systems, like they're even so different that they don't use hit points in the same way.
Yeah, no, they oversimplify.
My battalion has 5 hit points or something.
Exactly, and you super simply, they're oversimplified, and they try to squeeze the original character sheet, the options given by your original character sheet and stat block into something very simplified. But obviously they can't do it all with all the feats and all the. It's getting unbalanced. So what we decided on was, keeping the same stat. A unit of zombies is 1,000 hit points. It's 500 zombies or 50 zombies. And we try to keep it usable with the same character sheets. That's what I wanted to add.
But our rule system, I checked just now, it's less than a page. So it's literally like 5 paragraphs, and
yeah, we try to keep it super simple.
It works pretty well.
I think mine is like 7 pages or so. So it's mostly stat blocks.
It's not.
All right, not the stat, just the rules. So the stat is half a page.
Yeah. So how do you feel about vehicle combat and the vehicles in general? And we had naval combat in our last session, and we had the same problem going through it and trying to find a way of using it. Actually couldn't reform it that much compared to Ghosts of Saltmarsh.
Same. The campaign I've been running for the longest has been a pirate campaign. I think it lasted about 3 years in total. Mm-hmm. So I've experimented again, and most of my experiments failed miserably. At some point, I kind of gave up on it almost, because everything just went so poorly that I kind of gave up on it. And what I ended up doing is basically just engineering scenarios where you would get to feel like pirates without doing any actual piracy. Like, for example, I had this scenario where there was a submarine which the players wanted to steal, right? And in order to steal it, they had to go on this supply ship first, the supply ship of the submarine, which would meet with it at sea at a secret location just to give it more food and then maybe exchange some crew, etc. So the players had to first steal that supply ship, which they did by being in port and then just giving sleeping drugs to the entire crew and then replacing them. So they stole a ship without doing any actual ship-to-ship combat. Then they sailed to the meeting point, and the ships were Like the submarine just emerged next to them. So again, no ship-to-ship combat, but then they boarded it, so they still felt like pirates. So that's kind of what I ended up doing for a long, long time, is just giving up on the entire idea of ship-to-ship combat, because every time I tried to do it, it felt terrible. Like, one example, for example, I had an epic battle I had with a Kraken, which in my mind would go so well. But what ended up happening was the barbarian stood on the ship 500 feet from the Kraken, shot fireballs, and never once felt like a barbarian.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what ended up informing my video on Spelljammer, where basically I ended up going more in the direction of Star Wars than Star Trek, is the way I described it. Because in Star Trek, you have everyone on deck, and then everyone has a different role. So you have the navigator, you have the pilot, you have the captain who's shouting orders, etc. You have the technician who's repairing stuff. But in Star Wars, what happens is you have this capital ship, which is more a part of the map than an actual actor in this battle. And then everyone goes on these TIE fighters and these X-Wings, chasers, etc. And it's all about the dogfighting. And it's all about the individual performance of those pilots.
Yeah.
So if you're a barbarian, you can just mount on a magical mount, which we can just make up because it's magic. So, and you jump off your ship, which is just a part of the map at this point, and you use your magical bike to fly up to the enemy ship, and then you get to do barbarian things.
Yeah.
In that phase.
Definitely. Yeah. More than hack and slash. Yeah. Well, we have playtested it, and we have come up with basically nothing new. So we just wanted the ships to have the same stat block as a character, and try to simulate ship to ship combat, which could also be whatever, tank to tank, or just replace the vehicle type. And it turned out that it's, even though they are like big monsters, because of the many aspects and many attacks and high damage rolls and all that, we need to simplify that as well a bit. And I think it was enjoyable, and I hope everybody enjoys playing them, but they are definitely a time stretch too.
Yeah, and it is a mini game, so it's definitely a totally different and I thought, the kind of grind in it was distances and movement. So, once the characters got involved, ranges of spells and how your movement speed. So in a zoomed out battle, moving 90 feet or 180 with fly, dash, whatever is nothing, because you're talking about 500,000 feet. So characters are moving for like 5 rounds. It's pretty boring before they can engage a single target, and there's maybe 5 or 6 different ships in an armada or a fleet that they have to fight with. So that's what I found to be problematic. Not so much the damage attack kind of aspect.
Well, we summed up all the attacks into one, because it was all the siege weapons, attacking separately, and all my 6 ballistae for all my 6 ships became like 36, and then it's just roll 6 dice for 6 ships, and that's all your ballista, and we will just multiply the damage and do that.
And what Tommy described is the best scenario, where the ships are kind of just trying to reach each other. But what happened in one of my games is the players just absolutely destroyed turn 1 the enemy ship. Right? They just dropped it from 400 hit points to like 100. So at this point, as the GM, I was like, it doesn't make sense for this crew to try to take this fight. They have no way to win. So at this point, I just make them go a U-turn. They try to run away, and it just makes things even worse now.
Yeah,
because you have these two ships which have basically the exact same speed, and they're never gonna get closer. So you're never gonna get to board it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's a problem with this movement, and everybody moves 30 except for poor dwarves, whatever.
Yep.
It's very hard to do a good chase. Of course, you will probably start rolling strength checks, constitution checks, whichever how detailed you want to go into actual athletics. But yeah, movement
And
chases is crazy.
the funny aspect, because this is a high level Torrance is, an super high level adventure, and the kind of jolly joker ace in the sleeve was control water,
Oh yeah,
which basically
the win but
finishes the
train
ship,
counter.
Yeah.
There's your ship, and it's stuck there, and it's not coming any closer because it's in a vortex now, and there's no save, and
Yep.
Yeah,
I've been on the receiving end and the giving end of that one.
I had this memory of somewhere hearing that when you go to there was a place, I don't know who did this, and there's probably a legend around it, and I'm not remembering all the details, but there with the Star Wars Star Trek idea that in a job interview when you go there and they ask the guys all the time, which one do you like, Star Trek or Star Wars, and depending on their choices, they kind of had this image of the person applying for the job, that if it's a Star Trek guy, then he likes to work in a group and take a role, like you said, and have a distinctive job that he's focused on, and rely on the others doing their part, and adding to the sum. Where on the other hand, with Star Wars, it's more of a chaotic guy, and grab the back, the lasers in the back, and of course I'll do that. I'm a guy from Tatooine and the farmer, whatever. But I'll do that, whatever. And everybody's a bit more individualistic and don't go there. And of course he goes there, and it's more of an individualistic, I will solve it alone type of guy, which is, yeah.
Great for adventurers, as it turns out.
Yeah. Well, I guess both. Yeah. What else to add? Yeah, we have some notes on how we broke down the actual operation and management of a ship, where you take a role like in Star Trek, and now you heal the ship, and the other one is navigating it, and the third one is dealing with the crew, and the fourth one is managing whatever siege weapons. But that's how.
I think that
the way I still do it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that the biggest issue we had when we were coming up with this was hit location.
Oh
yeah.
Taking out the propeller or the wheel, or the sails of the ship,
the cannons.
Yeah.
That's kind of how Saltmarsh does it, I think.
Yeah.
You get to target which part of the ship you're aiming at, and then each part has like 400 hit points, so good luck taking it out.
No, but no, actually not, because the how it's done there is that they have lower hit points and maybe lower AC, and that immediately gives me the opportunity to always target the controls.
I think higher AC,
No, not even higher. No, and it's a very bad game design, because it gives you a loophole, and it motivates me to always attack the controls, because it only has 50 hit points, and then it's just stuck, and I basically cast paralyze on the ship, and then that's what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna shoot all of these from a distance, and then I'm going to back up and do the Arakokra versus Tarasku style stuff, taking them out from afar because they can't move. So I think that's pretty bad game design.
Yeah, and it's not fun to do it, but here's the thing: when you put a player in a dangerous situation, they're not going to take the most fun option most of the time. They're just going to go look at the numbers and go, oh, okay, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, well, choose your players wisely.
Yeah, some players are just going to go do a silly goblin voice and then look for whatever will result in the biggest explosion. That's me.
You see,
I'm that player.
But that gives a flavor and a good motivation, and not I think not. You definitely, as a player, should not look for most optimal solution. That's why we call it role playing, because you can play a dumb guy, you can play a pyromaniac goblin as you do. So
And people will still do it because people are cool, but like they have to go take an active step to ignore all of the math that's right in front of their eyes. Like it's an active decision. They at this point you're kind of having fun despite the system rather than thanks to it almost.
Mm-hmm. How did you get into D&D?
So I was doing some dev as I do, and then when I dev, I like having a video on the side, just on YouTube, and then let the random recommendation take me wherever.
So you can wait. You can write code and listen to people saying
absolutely
clever things, and you can multitask.
Code is the only thing that works for though. Like I can't write videos and then also listen to stuff. It's just code for some reason. It's a different part of my brain, I think.
That's a superpower, I think, that you have there.
Yeah. Like while coding, I would absolutely just recite the entirety of Hamilton, just because like only my eyes and my fingers are being used, so I get to use everything else. I get to use the ears to listen to a video. I get to sing very cringy songs.
I would consider your brain being used while you're coding, but coding is in your fingers and eyes, it seems.
I mean, sometimes, but most coding is what we call CRUDs. So create, read, update, delete. Like they're basically the 4 basic operations.
Mm-hmm.
And like most of the code that I ever write is this, 95%. So for the 5% where I actually have to think, sure, I'll turn off the video and actually focus.
Mm-hmm.
But for most of it, it's just I type a couple characters on the screen and I see if there's a still bug.
All right. So you were listening to
I was listening to a bunch of songs, and then there was an animatic. So basically, like imagine the very first few drafts of an animated movie where you see maybe one frame every couple of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
There was this animatic of, I think it was Jester from the second campaign of Critical Role. I don't remember what she was doing, but like the voice and everything. Obviously, these guys are voice actors in the Critical Role ensemble. So I completely was captivated and stopped coding for maybe 10 minutes. And then that day when I got home, I showed it to my friends and I was like, "Hey, this looks cool. I thought this was nerdy, but turns out I'm a nerd. Let's do it."
And then you convinced all your friends to play this?
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Cool, man. And what was the first session like?
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, obviously.
Who was the DM? Did you DM?
Yeah, I DM from the start. One of my players is interested in GMing, but he's working with a second group to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've basically been my group's GM from the start. My first... it was homebrew from the start, because if you're going to make a mistake, might as well go all the way. It was terrible. There was...
But did they enjoy it, or do they share the sentiment?
Oh, we had fun, of course. But it was not intentional.
Okay.
There was this bandit captain who actually was the guard captain who'd been like in a secret plot. It was a mess.
And do they stay with you for ever since? So they...
Oh yeah, we've been friends for basically my entire life at this point. So
no,
we've been friends since before D&D, and
but they carried on despite the terrible failure of the first session, and they wanted to improve and
give you an idea of how ridiculously underprepared I was to take this on. My first setting was the entirety of late antique Europe.
Uh-huh.
So imagine like the Roman Empire is a thing.
You're hitting a sweet spot with me here. And
you have like all of Irish mythology, except it's real. Yeah. You have like the gods of the Gaul, like Tutatis, etc.
Yeah.
Turns out the entirety of Europe is pretty big.
Yeah. And varied.
Yep. That was a bit more than I could chew.
Yeah.
So yeah, my first campaign fizzled out after about a year, but then like I learned from those mistakes. That's kind of how I do it.
Of
Basically,
course.
before I got into D&D back in 2018, I was mostly into competitive fighting games, so a very different thing.
Mhm.
But what that teaches you, if you're like a competitor, is you don't get to win without getting your butt kicked many times.
Sure.
So that's actually how I learn most things, is just face plant into every single mistake that you could possibly make, and then I learn from it, and I don't make those mistakes again.
Yeah. This just brings me. First of all, I would recommend you try other RPGs as well. Though
I've been dabbling, especially since the OGL nonsense.
Yeah.
We've tried a bit of Delta
do
Green.
you know Ars Magica? Because that's a pretty
the
much.
name tells me something.
It's a historical
or Pendragon.
Or Pendragon, yeah.
Pendragon, I've heard of it. I really like the idea of virtues and the opposite, what they call it.
Flows, yeah.
Flows, yeah.
Ars Magica works the same way, and I'm amazed Tommy has this memory, because it's been like, I don't know, maybe 25 years, 20 years since
I have the rule book, dude.
Oh, you have the rule book. All right. I haven't, it's like cult. I haven't played it for 20 years now, but
I need to read it, because do you know how many gods of death there are and how much of a mess it is to try to come up with a way that what happens when you die in late antique mythology Europe?
Yeah.
Who gets your soul? There's like 500 gods of death.
Yeah, exactly. I just have a few things to say that you should try these and look into these. It's a very sweet spot for me. I'm always, so if I could wish for a game, I would wish for a very simplified, deadly version of D&D or Cthulhu or whatever, where we play in the Roman Empire, and which the part I would love to have is have a historian like Tommy, who is a historian by profession, have the details, the actual details told me, because I was reading cyberpunk books on history classes, so to get me into this and submerge me into the actual real historical facts that were happening, but mix it up with mythos and Cthulhu stuff and magic or whatever, like dark shit. And oh, can I say shit on my own channel? Shit. So so like have that realistic sort of bring fantasy or bring mythos into this realistic setting, which is bound by the actual historical facts, and everything is documented, sort of, compared to
sort of.
Yeah, sort of. But if we go like medieval or
I think if you look at Irish mythology, there's like 15 different takes on what the family tree looks like. So one character might be their own grandmother sometime. It's fine. Don't worry too much about it.
Yeah, and then the first sessions. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you my first session, but no, it was fun. And just very briefly, we're from Hungary, right? So in 88, 89, it was still communism. You didn't have books to use, and all that. We were all photocopying stuff we got from, I don't know, from Vienna in Austria, so like getting it from the West. And we went to this club, and I had no idea. First, I thought that it's one DM and like 100 or 30 players, Then I realized, it's just 4 players. Okay, good. And then we sit down, and they told me that, play. No, because somebody was telling me about the game, and I depicted it, because he was telling it probably badly, but I depicted it this way. And then we sat down, and of course, okay, you play a dwarf fighter. Okay, that's simple. You don't need to learn spells and all that. And I was fighting zombies on a cobbled street, and I remember it completely as it was, and somebody cast Entangle from my party, and I remember all of it because I enjoyed it so much that I have the interactivity of doing all of this thing. I was, I don't know, 12, 11, but I don't know, it struck me very, very hard, as you can see, and I spread it on Tommy, who I grew up with, and our other friends. But also, the one more thing I wanted to tell about first experiences is I had a girlfriend who was playing Cthulhu with us, at one point she never played RPGs ever in her life. Okay, so she was like, okay, you guys play this, I play with you, I love you, let's play together. And she was playing an aristocrat girl, and I remember that there was this little monsters thingy that jumped on her, and she was like immediately, she was thinking out of the box compared to us, because she was like, I put my perfume and spray in its eyes so I can run away. And I was like, oh,
perfect.
Baby, marry me. You're beautifully executing this game here. So yeah, first tries are always fun. Is there anything else you wish to share with us or talk about?
Not that I can think of right now. I've already talked about my current project, my sci-fi RPG. So
yeah,
again, if you'd like to check it out, there's probably a link down there.
So yeah, there will be.
Follow the link.
It's very much a work in progress. So basically, you see how good stuff like DC-20, which just came out, looks like. It's not going to look like that. It's going to look terrible. That's the entire point.
Don't worry about that. Also, you have several apps, right? That you provide.
Yeah, I'm working. Basically, when you start on YouTube, you kind of have to try to figure out what is the thing I can bring to this platform that people haven't done yet. And since I'm a software engineer, I figured, yeah, that's what I'll do. So I made a bunch of apps. I've made one which is called Battle Sim, which you can use for 5e. It's an encounter simulator, which works a bit differently from the one in the Dungeon Master's Guide. When I say encounter simulator, that's actually what it does, right? It runs an entire battle and then shows you the output.
Yeah.
So you don't need to worry about things like, what does it mean if the DMG tells me it's a hard encounter, and actually when I run it, it's super easy.
Balancing, right? So I mean, it's a tool for balancing.
The idea is like, let the computer crunch the numbers for you, and then you can try a bunch of different scenarios, and when you get something that looks good for you, you just do that.
Yeah, very useful. And I thank you in the name of the whole community, even those who don't know about it yet, that you do such things. Is this all available? This is all available on your site, right? As I remember. So
it's listed on my site, yes.
If
I should probably put it in more prominent position because I think it's hidden in one of the pages.
Oh,
I can send you the link. We can add it to the description.
We will definitely do that.
Another website I worked on, which was pretty recent. It's only 2 months old. It's called Quest Check, and it's a website where you can register to a bunch of people's playtests.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
The idea is like, you guys have an entire community of playtesters, which is really good, and I'm very jealous. But for most people, like, it's really, really hard to find playtesters. You can probably see it. I've published books before for D&D. Those books were usually not playtested just because I didn't have the reach, I didn't have the know-how, I didn't have the network to organize these things. So I'm basically trying to build this as a platform. It's completely free. There's no ads. You can tell me delete your information, and I actually will, unlike a lot of websites out there. So yeah, it's just a website to put you in touch with a bunch of tabletop creators of all sizes who are just looking for feedback and a fresh new pair of eyes.
Did it pick up traffic?
Yeah, it did. It's actually been one of my most successful videos. I think it reached 45,000 views, something like that.
No, I mean, that's good to hear. But the actual tool, did it pick up traffic? Do people apply? Do people submit their
data? They do. I think we have a total of about 900 users at this point.
Wow, that's nice.
That is really nice. I'm really proud of it. Like, I haven't posted any playtests myself yet. I intend to for my post-apocalyptic system, but not yet. It's not quite ready to actually playtest with people outside of just my own group for now.
But this proves actually that it is useful. So
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you do use it, there is one thing I would like to request, because it's not on by default, but you can enable Discord notification whenever there is a new playtest, and you can add some filters, like maybe only notify me when there's a playtest with which is a paid gig, or maybe when there's a playtest for 5e, or like you could set up your own filters, but just the bot will tell you when there's a new playtest for this. Because I'm not naive, right? I know this is exactly the type of website which normally people would visit twice and then they would forget about it forever and then never visit it again. So yeah, if you enable those Discord notifications, that will ensure that the information reaches you even if you don't visit it every day.
Yeah. But I think many people are looking for gaming groups. I'm sorry, Tommy, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted a little plug that we're already, as I said, writing Scepter of the Lightbringer, and we'll definitely open it up for playtesting, which through us. So we're going to be live GMing it to a.
But you better be from Europe because we do it during work hours.
Well, some American guys, last time
many of them woke up.
They woke up super early,
or went to sleep very late in Australia. And New Zealand. Yeah, bless them. Love you guys.
But coming soon in about, I don't know, half a year or within half a year.
We are also
we'll get around to it.
We are also a development company of online games by profession, and we also will come up with an advanced. Well, you probably have seen or might have seen our Soundscape app, and we will come up with a newer, fresher version where you can also create your own soundscapes and all that. I think all of these tools are really handy, and you can find the right ones. I think I give you an idea, which we might not make, or if we do, then we're just competitors, like a map generator, or little tools like the encounter balancer and stuff, which are really handy and just are not done by anyone. Obviously, it should be wizards doing all of these handy tools, except for maybe or instead of us, but. I'm
really curious how they will handle the whole challenge rating with 1D&D. I don't think we've gotten a single word about it yet, only that they're working on it.
I don't know, man. They work in mysterious ways. Yeah, so I'm a fan of the game, not a big fan of wizards. But
it's a healthy thing. Probably, yeah.
So whenever you feel like talking to us again, we are here, just ping us, and we would be happy to continue on other topics. Until then, I would like to thank you. It's been very informative. I hope all our viewers found it also very informative and entertaining. Please follow us on Discord. Please visit our actual play videos where we play Torrents of the Spellhoarder, and our site elderbrain.com, where you can check out all of our products. Please go to Trek's site where he has so many good stuff, free stuff, apps, and it's probably gonna be more and more because he doesn't have to think when he's coding. It's just his fingers and his eyes. And that's a biggie. And I hope you enjoyed our mind blast, and see you next time. Please subscribe and like. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Trek.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us for today and in the future. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Oh, he's gone. He's back. Ciao.